Hey guys, for today's video, I'll be going over Cerydra's kits, relics, ornaments, Lightcones, teams, and constellations to help you reach her full potential. Starting off with her kit, her skill grants the military merit effect to one designated ally character and gives Cerydra 1 point out of 8 maximum points of charge. When charge reaches 6 points, the ally character's military merits automatically upgrades to Pirage, and dispels their crowd control debuff, with characters with the Pirage effect also being considered to have the military merit effect. It also increases the crit damage boost for skill damage by 72% for characters with Pirage, increases all type rest pen by 10%, and said characters can also trigger a coup de main when using their skill on enemy targets. Coup de main is an effect that replicates the ability, aka the skill that is about to be used. It uses the replicate skill, then uses the original skill. After coup de main ends, she consumes 6 points of charge to revert Pirage back to military merits. For her ultimate, it gives Cerydra 2 charge, then deals wound damage equal to 240% of Cerydra's attack to all enemies. If there are no characters with military merits on the field, it prioritizes granting military merits to the character in position 1 in the team lineup, so make sure to always have your main DPS in the first position. For her talent, it states that characters with the military merit, which again qualifies for characters with the Pirage effect as well, have their attack increased by an amount equal to 24% of Cerydra's attack, and when the character uses a basic attack or skill, Cerydra gains 1 charge. It also states that Cerydra cannot gain charges while the coup de main is in effect, and after characters with military merit use an attack, Cerydra deals 1 additional instance of wound damage equal to 60% of her attack, and this effect can be triggered up to 20 times. The trigger count resets when Cerydra uses her ultimate, and military merit only takes effect on the most recently applied target. When the target changes, Cerydra's charge is reset to 0. Also, keep in mind that although this additional damage is not considered an attack, crit stats do affect it, since unlike Robin, these additional attacks are more like tribbies. For her first passive, it states that when Cerydra's attack is greater than 2000, for every 100 attack exceeded, it increases her own crit damage by 18% up to a maximum of 360%, meaning that if you want to get to 360 crit damage on her, you're also going to need 4000 attack. For her other passive, it increases Cerydra's crit rate by 100%, and while Cerydra's charge is less than maximum, Cerydra gains 1 point of charge when a character with military merit uses her ultimate. Keep in mind that this effect can only be triggered once per battle, so it's practically useless. Her other passive states that when using a skill, it increases the speed of Cerydra and teammates with military merit by 20 for 3 turns. And when a character with military merit uses their basic attack or their skill, Cerydra regenerates 5 energy. So how do you actually apply all of this information and actually play Cerydra optimally? Well, all you're gonna want to do is use your skill as much as your skill point budget allows you to, since she's gonna want to get enough energy to use her ultimate consistently, which although may not be crucial, her ultimate will come in handy since it'll make it so that your carry can trigger the coup de main faster. Not only that, but spamming her skill will allow her to get more charge stacks, which will also make it so that your carry can trigger the coup de main faster to the point to where they can pretty much trigger it every other rotation. After that, you just have to be conscious of when your additional damage is used so that you can replenish her additional damage by using her ultimate. So with her kits and her playstyle out of the way, it's time to get into her required stats. Cerydra is going to want attack, speed, and that's it. Damage dealt would be decent for her personal DPS, which is really low, and energy recharge would also be decent for her ultimate and thus her charge regeneration, but only in certain scenarios that are typically not ideal. So for her required stats, she's gonna want 4000 to 5000 attack and 134 or 142 speed. She's gonna want 4000 attack to fully max out her crit damage passive, and around 1000 more attack would be good so that your carry can just get more attack. She's gonna want 134 speed because this is the typical amount of speed, since it's one of the easily obtainable speed breakpoints that lets your character get extra turns. But because of her passive giving her 20 more speed when she uses her skill, that means that she's going to have 154 speed the majority of the time, which isn't a breakpoint. Thus, at 134 speed, this speed increase from 134 to 154 won't give you 3 extra turns, but rather only 2 extra turns, which is why if you just manage to crank out a little bit more speed, aka 8 more speed from your substats, and to manage to get Cerydra at 142 speed, with the speed increase from her passive, you'll be able to get to the 162 speed breakpoints and have another extra turn. However, if you can't crank out that extra speed, like I said, you'll still be able to have 2 extra turns, so don't sweat about it if you can't. Regardless, I would recommend prioritizing that speed breakpoint rather than that extra extra 1000 plus attack, since with her ideal teammates, Feinen, he'll typically already have an excess amount of attack. With those crucial stats out of the way, for her relics, her ideal relic set is going to be the Cerydra set because it increases the crit damage by her carry by 36% and her speed by 6%. This set will be really good with her because the crit damage evens out the amount of attack that she gives to her carries. Not only that, but like I mentioned in the required stats section, speed is going to be one of her most crucial stats. For alternative sets, you could use a 2-piece bonus set of either attack or speed at your own discretion. These sets will be viable and affordable since attack and speed are her 2 most crucial stats, and everybody knows that it's much easier to build a relic set with 2-piece bonuses rather than a full 4-piece bonus set. For her planner ornaments, her ideal set is going to be the Lushaka set because it increases her energy recharge by a viable amount, and it increases the attack percentage of her carry by an amount that won't have to be converted, meaning that instead of increasing her carry's attack by an amount that's based on her attack by an amount that's based off of her base attack, she'll just be increasing the attack of your carry directly, which will be much more efficient. For an alternative, the Broken Keel set would be decent because it increases the crit damage of your carry once she reaches 30% effect rest. For another alternative, the Fleet of the Ageless would also be viable because it increases her survivability and it increases the attack of all allies by only 33% less than the Lushaka set, which is her ideal set. For her main stats, you're gonna want attack percentage on her chest, speed or attack percentage on her boots, depending on your substats and goals, attack percentage on her sphere, and attack percentage on her rope. For her substats, like I said, you should prioritize getting to her 4000 attack, then to your desired speed breakpoints, then you should try to get as much attack, defense, and HP percentage as possible because she'll typically be ran in a Feinen team where Sustainless is the most viable option. For her Lightcones, obviously her signature Lightcone is going to be her best in slot because it increases her attack by a whopping 64% and it gives her 1 skill point when she uses her ultimate to attack, which is always pretty good for a support. She also further increases the skill damage of an ally when targeting them with her skill by increasing their damage dealt by 54%. For a 5-star alternative, Sunday's signature Lightcone would be good because it gives her 6 energy when using her skill on an ally, and it increases the damage dealt of that ally by 15% up to 45%. It also gives her a skill points after she uses her skill 2 times, which again is always insanely good for a support. For a 4-star alternative, the Forever Victual Lightcone would be good because it increases her attack by 32%, and after using her skill, it increases her attack further by 16% up to 48% at Super and Position 5, resulting in an 80% increase to her attack. For another alternative, the Dreamville Adventure Lightcone would be decent for wind carries like Anaxa or Saber because it increases their wind damage by 20% at Super and Position 5. For another alternative, the Dance 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 Lightcone would also be viable because it advances the team forward by 24% when she uses her ultimate. From her teams, Cerydra is going to be viable with characters that depend heavily on their skill. Still, there are a couple of exceptions to this rule, with characters like the Herda, who does most of her skill damage due to her stacks, will not be able to make use of Cerydra's Coupe de Main because after the replicated version of her skill, her next skill won't do anywhere near as much damage because all of her stacks will be gone. She also won't be good with HP scaling characters like Medei or Jing Liu, even if they do the majority of their damage through their skills. With that being said, Anaxa and Feinen are the only characters who can actually make use of her kit's full potential, with Saber and Archer being viable, but only decent relative to Anaxa and Feinen. Regardless, Cerydra will be good with a hyper carry Anaxa who isn't being ran with the Herda because Cerydra won't be able to buff the Herda like Tribi, Silverwolf, or Cypher since her skill is only single target. Cerydra will be good with a hyper carry Anaxa because Anaxa does the majority of his damage by spamming skills. What is so good about this pairing though is that the Coupe de Main of Cerydra works with the extra skill from Anaxa that he does when he uses his skill on an enemy that has up to 5 weaknesses, meaning that if Anaxa uses the Coupe de Main will copy Anaxa's original skill and his extra skill as well, then Anaxa will proceed to do his original skill and his extra skill as well, which will allow him to do 4 consecutive skills and potentially damage enemies up to 20 times, which will fully make use of Cerydra's additional attacks, all in one usage of Coupe de Main. Cerydra will also be extremely good with Feinen because Feinen's main damage comes from using his enhanced skill during his ultimate, which typically requires up to 2 basic attacks, which takes up way too many turns because he only has 7 turns, or it takes up at least 1 counter, which will still take up at least a turn and where he could have just done a ton of skill damage. However, with Cerydra, Feinen won't have to waste turns using basic attacks or counters to do another skill, because Cerydra will be able to copy it for him. For Saber, Cerydra will be pretty good since Saber is so oversaturated with crit stats that the attack boost of Cerydra would actually be really good with her. Not only that, but Cerydra won't buff Saber's insane ultimate damage, but she'll definitely be able to help her get that ultimate a lot quicker. For Archer, Cerydra is only decent with him, considering that she's not a quantum character who can synergize with Archer's best teammate, Sparkle. Not only that, but the Coup de Main will only be able to copy one of Archer's skills, meaning that all Cerydra would be providing would be 2 skill points around every other rotation. For her Constellations, her C1 states that the character with military merits will ignore 16% of their target's defense when dealing damage. If the military merit state is upgraded to the Pirage state, the character additionally ignores 20% of the target's defense when dealing skill damage. It also states that when Cerydra uses her skill, it regenerates 2 energy for the designated ally character, which is decent since her only good teammates don't really use any defense threat characters like Pella and Silverwolf, meaning that this is only an 18% damage boost rather than a potential 110% damage boost if you were to also use Silverwolf. Regardless, considering that Cerydra's teammates are typically oversaturated with attack and crits, defense threat is one of the only other available amplifiers, thus it provides accelerated returns in comparison to attack and crit. Not only that, but even though the energy that she provides is really small, considering that one of her best teammates is Feinen, this energy will be really good for core flame generation. For C2, it states that characters with military merits deal 40% more damage, and while a teammate with military merits is on the field, Cerydra's damage increases by 160%. This constellation is decent since the damage dealt that she gives to her allies helps her even out the amount of attack that she gives them. The 160% damage increase is also extremely good for her sub DPS, considering that she's already going to be filled with attack and crit stats, but her sub DPS damage isn't even that good to begin with, so regardless, this constellation is only decent. For C4, it states that it increases the ultimate damage multiplier by 240%, which again, it is good for her sub DPS, but it's really mediocre, thus this constellation is mediocre. For her C6, it states that characters with military merits increase their all-type breast pen by 20%, and the multiplier for additional damage triggered via military merits increases by 300%. It also states that while a teammate with military merit is present on the field, Cerydra's all-type breast pen increases by 20%. This constellation is actually pretty good for her carry since it finally lets them have an amount of all-type breast pen that is actually good, and it increases their skill damage dealt by a substantial amount, all while increasing her sub DPS damage multipliers to the point to where her damage is actually insane. For pull recommendations, I would recommend to only summon on Cerydra if you literally only care about Feinen and Anaxa, since although she will be a good boost to their damage, she'll be practically useless everywhere else, and although she does have potential to buff future skill dependent characters, summoning on a character solely off of their potential is typically never a good idea, since you can always just summon on them during their rerun. Regardless, if you do want to summon on Cerydra, even with this in mind, I would recommend going for her C1 first, since it's really good for Feinen's core flame generation and provides defense shred, which gives accelerated returns compared to other buffs. Then going for her C2, since it increases the damage of her carry's attacks by 40%. Then after that, I would go for her Sig, since even though it's pretty good, her free 4-star option is definitely good enough to the point to where you don't need to prioritize getting her Sig. Not only that, but her signature is only able to be used by Cerydra, similarly to how Sparkle's Lightcone is only able to be used by Sparkle, meaning that they don't hold anywhere near as much value as a signature like Sundays. Regardless, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have anything to say, please leave it down in the comments below. I would greatly appreciate it. Goodbye.